Welcome to Conversations with a Wounded Healer. I'm your host, Sarah Bueno. I'm a psychotherapist, teacher, consultant, and most importantly, a wounded healer, living and working in Chicago, Illinois.
And I'm your host, Anne Remy. I'm a counseling psychotherapist, yoga teacher, and trauma specialist living in Brighton, UK. On this show, we interview folks in a variety of healing professions, and we discuss the intersectional journey of healing self while caring for others.
But we're not just focused on individual healing, but also healing on the collective level, from white supremacy, late-stage capitalism, and the patriarchy. Thanks for joining us. Hello, Anne.
Oh, hey, Sarah.
Oh, hey. I am so sorry about your microphone, that it's not working today.
I am so sorry about my microphone. Yeah, sorry to everybody listening today.
No, we don't apologize, but we do just let people know.
Oh, yeah. I take my apology back.
Thank you for understanding is what we do.
Thank you for understanding
right.
that we're having technical difficulties over here in this United Kingdom.
But we're here and the sun is shining on both of us right now through my window, through your window. And so who could want more than that?
They started selling tater tots in the frozen aisle in the UK. So now who could want for more?
Now
this is a big deal for me when I saw them today.
Correct.
Yeah.
Ooh, that sounds, I'm going to have to look for some tater tots later today. Anyway, how are you? Tater tots and sunshine.
Tater tots and sunshine. Real excited to have tater tots with you. I'm good. I'm healthier than the last time we recorded, which is nice.
Yes.
I am less employed than the last time we recorded, which is also very exciting. You and I just had a really good conversation, and I'm really excited to bring that into this space as well.
Yes.
How are you?
I am having a good day. I'm saying that really slowly because I'm kind of like checking through all of the things. The perimenopause saga continues, and I had to give a lot of sass to my doctor's office after they wildly disappointed me. I had a talk with a dear friend of mine who used to be a doctor and is now a somatic therapist, and she was really encouraging me on how to advocate, how to, like, it's so wild that, like, when you go into a doctor's office, the doctor assumes that you don't know what you're talking about.
Yes.
And I don't know what I'm talking about other than I know I have a constellation of symptoms that it may not just be perimenopause, and there's a lot of stuff going on. And I am aware more than most humans, not most, but a lot of humans, right? Like you too, right? You have a body awareness that's probably like above average because of the work that we do. Yes. And it's frustrating. I always get frustrated when people don't, is it respect? Maybe it's respect me in a way that I feel like I deserve respect for, like, the work that I've done to get where I am mentally, emotionally, physically, all of that.
I have that exact same. For me, it's like the sort of root of that is not being seen.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you don't see all the hard work I put in to be able to sit here and tell you that this thing doesn't feel right.
Yes.
Even though you don't understand why it doesn't feel right.
Yep.
So I'm sorry that's been your experience.
Thank you. Well, if you want to be seen by us,
yes,
you could donate on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/conversations with a wounded healer or something. If you search for Conversations with a Wounded Healer on Patreon, you will find us. You can donate as little as $1 a month. You will get our undying gratitude and potentially a gift if you live in the US and UK. So if you want to be seen by us, that's one way you can do it. Another way you can do it is by rating us and leaving reviews. You can do it on Apple Podcasts or ratethispodcast.com/wounded healer. And we would be ever so grateful. So let's dig in, because this episode was challenging for you and for me in some ways. And we're not going to talk as much about the episode as we're going to talk about the process of talking about the episode. And I guess what I would like for listeners to know as you listen to the episode is that if you hear things that infuriate you, that's okay. And I don't know, and what else?
Okay, so if you hear things that infuriate you, know that they were probably the same things that infuriated me.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't stop me from being able to have a conversation with Sarah about it.
Yes.
And that is the most important takeaway from kind of what you and I talked about, because the phrase you used, Sarah, was what you said, dangerous feelings. You said this brought up dangerous feelings.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're talking a lot about the Enneagram and spiral dynamics in this episode. And so if you're interested and you want to learn more, listen to Trace Bell's second episode, which is, kind of giving you like the lowdown of spiral dynamics. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is the whole way that the spiral works and what has been helpful for me. The big takeaway that I took the first time I learned about it was that we look forward in fear and we look behind in disdain. And wherever our center of gravity ends up on the spiral at any given moment, it's not the same place at every single time. If we hear something that is coming from a level that is beyond our current capacity where we are in that given moment, we tend to be afraid of it and think that it's dangerous. And if we hear something that is a place, behind us in the developmental spiral, it sounds dumb. And we're like, that's obviously stupid. We need to do better. So that's what I'm holding as the reason why we are not understanding each other as a culture right now. Let's take an example that's not between you and me. Let's take an example that's going on between everyone in the US right now in terms of, let's see, this is going to get posted after the election. We may not know who the winner's going to be. Yeah. But so we've got the Republicans saying from our ears wild things. And I am always like, there's a part of me, of course, that's like, how the hell could anybody buy this? How the hell could anybody think that Trump is the right person to vote for? If I put myself in the place in the spiral that makes it possible for me to think that Trump is the right person to vote for, it makes sense.
So the inherent problem I have with this is that, to me, this sounds like there's some kind of hierarchy.
I know that's what it sounds like, and that's not what it is. I don't know how to better make it not sound like that.
Yeah, and this was not my reaction, but when you said we look forward at things in fear because we're not on that level yet, the way that I could have interpreted that was,
right.
So this was dangerous to me because I'm not on the level of you two. And
I know,
which is not how I interpreted it, because I know that that's not what you meant. And this is where
so hard.
Yeah, this is where this language feels really, to me, it feels really problematic. And yeah, I think I'm just coming back to the sort of issues with hierarchy. And it does feel important to me because there is a very specific moment in the episode that really hit me hard. It does feel really important to me to recognize that.
Yeah, tell listeners the part.
So you and Deborah are talking about the global stage, politics at the moment, things going on between nations, and Deborah refers to the Israeli-Palestinian issue, which the language around that to me is already a problem. And then says something to the effect of, it gives the appearance of a genocide, but this is how we evolve. And I heard that and went, I'm sorry, what? You're telling me that this is I had to listen to it 3 times because I was like, there's no way that she just said that. And my immediate response internally was, well, Sarah and I are going to have a good conversation about this one. Mm-hmm. It was helpful for me to kind of hear your understanding of that comment. And it was also helpful for me to know that I know you're not an asshole. So I was going to be able to talk to you about this, and we were going to be able to, at the end of the day, agree to disagree on parts of this. Yeah. And then we can always agree on other parts of it. But I knew at no point in starting this conversation with you, I knew that we would not hit a point where I would just be like, done with Sarah, bye.
Right.
And I also trusted you to be able to hear this from me and not be like, oh, bye, Anne,
Right.
And that, I think, is the biggest takeaway. And that's what we really want everyone listening to hear, is that it is possible to hear things that you vehemently disagree with, things that push every single one of your buttons, because listening to this episode quite honestly pushed all of my current ones and all of my past ones.
You're welcome. Take that one into therapy.
Yeah. And it made me feel really unsafe while I was listening to it. And I survived it, right? B, I was able to have a conversation with you. We were able to have a conversation about it and still have the same good opinion of each other. And we're able to kind of work through our differences and how we look at things on this one. Does that feel fair to say?
Absolutely. And I guess I want to add for listeners too that I do think that there is an evolutionary process at play that is calling us to be able to do this very thing, because there's a meme floating around right now that says something like, we can disagree on what music we like or what this and that, but we can't disagree on genocide. But people are disagreeing on genocide, you guys. People are disagreeing about it. And I know people who aren't considering what's happening in Palestine a genocide. I know people who don't believe that. And I know that they're still good people. And I know some people might not like to hear that, but this is the moment we're living in where we have to figure out a way to speak to each other when we're hearing wildly different things that sound dangerous. And it's so hard because there are some people, Trump, who are saying things that are dangerous that we can't listen to. And there are people that are saying things that sound dangerous that we're just going to have to just hold and be with. And the discernment required for moving through this time and what is coming down the pike is heightened. And so I'm so glad, because if I was doing this by myself and I didn't have you to say, wait a minute, danger, danger, then I could easily go forward and just keep saying things without having you in my head. And I'm always trying to do that from a listener perspective too. That's why I sort of interrupt a couple times in the episode and I try to clarify for what I think people are hearing. This is high level shit that we're doing, you and I, right now. And I don't mean that like what other people are doing is low, but like this is how we change our brains, like you and I and all of the listeners, to expand our capacity for conversation. And when I asked Deborah to be on the podcast, I had no idea that this is what was going to come out, but this was what was supposed to come out.
Yeah, I agree. And I also just kind of want to acknowledge the fact that it takes two people who have done a shit ton of their own work. Yeah. The privilege of like, we've done all our therapy. We both have currently mostly regulated nervous systems, and we know how to support ourselves in this process. And that is not available to everybody. Not that there's a hierarchy, but not everybody has a regulated nervous system that's going to allow them to safely go through a conversation like this. And I respect that too.
Absolutely.
So I think what I'm hoping people can take away from this discussion is these conversations can feel scary, and that's super normal. And if you can allow yourself to find where your boundaries are, right? Find your edge of like, this is uncomfortable, but I can stay in it, like getting in a hot tub, right? But also know where this is no longer a safe situation for me to be in, and I need to exit.
Well, when you're listening to something, it's not necessarily unsafe, but it's uncomfortable.
Yeah. But I think in engaging in conversations with other people, like there does come a point where you are now no longer in a safe situation and you need to, extract yourself from that. So find the first boundary and attempt to push it even a tiny bit. Find the second boundary so you can keep yourself safe.
Spoken like a beautiful somatic therapist.
Hey!
Yay! All right. And this intro has been so long. So we are going to introduce Deborah. Deborah Ooten, PhD, is the founder and director of the Conscious Living Center. She has her doctorate in clinical psychology and is trained as a craniosacral therapist, is a certified Enneagram teacher, and a narrative tradition. She's the founder and lead trainer of Conscious Dynamics LLC. So listen with caution to my conversation with Deborah Ooten.
Yeah.
Hello, Deborah. Welcome to Conversations with a Wounded Healer.
Hey, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
I'm super excited to have learned about your work and then get to chat with you today. First things first, are you in Cincinnati?
I am. I'm in Cincinnati right now.
I'm from Fairfield, Ohio.
There you go.
Yeah, so I'm sure you've been to Jungle Gyms.
Well, years ago, for gosh sakes.
Yeah. That's the only point. Like when people say Fairfield, I don't know where that is. Jungle Gyms.
Yeah, right.
So yeah.
Right. Jungle gyms. Exactly.
Yeah. So you are in my childhood stomping grounds.
Yeah, I'm in Mount Auburn.
Mount Auburn. Okay. Is that, oof, I'm really being tested. I literally have not been back there in 10 years.
So it's like, where Christ Hospital is.
Okay.
I should say the Christ Hospital.
Sure. They probably prefer that. Sure. Yeah. Well, why don't you tell listeners a little bit about yourself before we start digging in?
Okay. Well, it's not my favorite thing to do, but let's see. So, I have a PhD in clinical psychology. I'm really, I've built like 5 businesses out of the Enneagram and spiral dynamics. I'm getting older. That's one of the things. I've got 3 grandchildren, 7 and 3.5, 2 3.5-year-olds. I kind of split my time between Asheville, North Carolina and Cincinnati. And I do a lot of corporate work and one-on-one. I call it executive life coaching now. I, let all those license and stuff go. So I'm doing coaching. I don't call it therapy anymore. People get a little testy about that kind of stuff. So that's kind of what I do. And I also do corporate trainings with large corporations like P&G, Toyota, Sunstar, LexisNexis, ConAgra. I could go on, but blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. And I guess first question, well, actually first question. So what's your Enneagram number?
So I say I fixate at type 8.
That's what I was vibing with. Yes. Thank you. I love to play that game. Like, can I type the person? And I already told you, and listeners probably know because I love the Enneagram. I'm a 3.
Okay.
And I'm a self-preservation subtype. So I don't always appear as a 3 is what I've been told.
That's correct.
Yep.
That's the counter type.
Yeah. So we'll get into all those details. But first, a little bit more about you, if you can stomach talking about it. What led you to the field of psychology and then to the Enneagram and spiral dynamics?
What led me there was a really messed up family.
I hear that.
So I, 17, 18, I went into the U.S. Army.
Wow.
I'm a Vietnam vet. And so I went into the Army and I kind of did too many drugs and, too many crazy things and ended up in a shrink's office. And the shrink said, you know what? You don't need to be seeing me. You need to be seeing the occupational therapist. So that's my first degree, occupational therapy, master's of OT. And so from there, I just honestly, I got fired from my first 3 real jobs. They don't fire professionals. They just invite you to resign. So I left those jobs and started my own business and went back to school to get my PhD.
Wow.
In clinical psychology with a little bit of organizational development on the side.
So you've always been interested in doing the corporate work?
No, I can't say that I have. What happened, it's the better money, of course.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that came along. But I was really just happy doing one-on-one and couples and groups. And then somebody from Procter & Gamble called me and said, hey, I got a team that really needs some help. Can you come over and help me? And it was a fast track from there. I built conscious dynamics out of that and still vibing with those folks. So
yeah, my uncle used to work for P&G and is a proud retiree, and I've had a lot of friends that went into work for. That's like the place. If you're from Cincinnati, that's like the place to work.
Yeah, it's good money and they're cream of the crop, brilliant people.
Absolutely. Well, and then what was your introduction to the Enneagram and spiral dynamics?
So somebody said to me once, you're a fucking 8. And I said, I don't know what that means and I don't care. And so I think she gave me Don Risso's first book, The Enneagram. And, then I started reading it and I thought, this is kind of interesting. I was in therapy myself and I thought I was getting worse, not better. I thought my patients at the time were getting worse, not better. And so I wanted to look at how to do things differently. So I found the Enneagram, and it set me free, literally set me free. I decided, I'm not, I'm not as messed up. Everybody else is messed up. And so kind of turned the tables for me. So I really enjoyed learning the Enneagram. I did meet it in like 1974 when I was at UC Berkeley
Wow.
in California, but I didn't go anywhere with it at that point. And so then I read a few books, and I said to my partner at the time, I think I'm going to start teaching this. And she said, you need to get certified. Okay.
I love how the 8 is just like, yeah, I'm just going to like power through and do this thing. And people are like, whoa,
Right,
whoa,
right,
whoa.
right. She's a self-pressed 6. She fixates at 6. So I'm like, okay. So then I studied with Helen Palmer and David Daniels out in California. And once I finished studying with them, I just started incorporating it to my work, my clients. Now I shifted from patients to clients. Everybody started getting better. And it's just an excellent tool. And then I also had a friend who is an Enneagram type 2, and she said, "Hey, I'm going to go study with Don Beck. You want to do that with me?" And I said, "Absolutely. I'm a systems junkie, so I love
Yes.
I love that kind of stuff." And so I said, "Absolutely." So I studied with Don Beck, I don't know, God, many, many, many years ago. And then I studied with Natasha Todorovic and Chris Cowan. Now that the boys are gone and Natasha is the only one left of the spiral dynamics group. Of course, Ken Wilber does some spiral dynamic stuff, but it's not,
He calls it,
um,
yeah,
yeah, it's not Claire Graves' work. It's
right.
a kind of,
Yeah, offshoot.
it's a Ken Wilber.
Yep.
He loves systems too, and he likes to put them together, and I like reading about them. So actually, it was Ken Wilber who had me pair the two. I was reading his book, Integral Psychology, and he said something like, the Enneagram's a great typography, but it's flat. Maybe somebody should pair it with something like spiral dynamics to give it multidimensionality. And I thought, hey, I'm the only person I know who knows both of those systems. And so I talked with Don at the time and Helen and David and said, hey, this is what I want to do. Is it okay? And they're like, yeah. Neither one of them liked, you know, Helen didn't like spiral dynamics at the time, and Don was like the Enneagram.
Like, whatever.
What the what? You know?
Mm-hmm.
So I paired those two and did a research study and have been going down that road ever since.
That's so cool. And I mean, well, I guess let's back up just a little bit. We have had somebody who talked about the Enneagram on the podcast, but it's been a million years. Rachel Alexandria was her name, and she was lovely. Would you mind sort of breaking down the nuts and bolts of what the Enneagram is?
So, from my way of thinking about it, the Enneagram is the greatest tool for self observation and awareness and awakening. And, originally we got it as a process Enneagram from George Ivanovich Gurdjieff. In the late 1800s, early 1900s, it came to the United States. It was a mystery school teaching. It was not a personality system. And then mid 70s started to morph into a personality system. It's a personality typing system that basically says that there are 9 types. And those 9 types, there are 3 in the body, 3 in the mind, and 3 in the heart. So 8, 9, and 1 are in the body, 2, 3, and 4 are in the heart, and 5, 6, and 7 are in the mind. And so I like to talk about those as centers of intelligence. So if we're only operating with one center of intelligence, we're kind of dumb. And our social emotional intelligence is weak or lacking. So the reason I teach the Enneagram all over the world is to help people wake up to their own habitual ways of thinking, feeling, and behaving. And that's the key. I mean, you know, I could talk about all of the 9 types, but it's kind of,
Yeah.
not my favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
I can just tell you that it's the system itself is just a beautiful system that is really great at showing you the box that you've gotten yourself into. And none of us get out of here without a type. We all become habitual, or what I like to say, it's 50% nature, 50% nurture. And by the time we're 7, our type is formed. And then we go about honing it. And if we're lucky, someplace around 35, 40, we start to wake up to the fact that, you know what, I've had the same fight with my partner every time. It's the same fight. But I have these same thoughts. They're the same thoughts, and so then you can start to notice what's arising in yourself by using the inner observer, which is a bridge that takes us from our ego fixation to our essence or our higher self, our God self, is the way I like to look at it, our divine self, who we truly are. Our Enneagram type is not who we are. It's a mask. I actually call it a strategy for success on planet Earth.
Wow. Okay. That makes so much sense.
And so who we really are divine beings.
Well, and I'm happy to use myself as an example to like make that make sense to folks, because it's interesting. Like, so as a 3, an Enneagram 3, one of the most important things to me is to look like I'm achieving at all cost. And because I'm a self-preservation 3, the counter type, it's not just about looking good, but about actually being good. So that's the pressure that I put on myself constantly. And when I can find relief from that, when I can take off the pressure and remember that the achievement is the doing itself, I can kind of reframe for myself and set myself free a little bit.
And that's the beauty of the system. That's it right there.
Yeah.
When you can step back and notice, I call it witnessing consciousness or inner observer. And we need that in place in order to wake up. That's our job really on Earth.
Yeah.
Fall asleep, wake up, fall asleep, wake up.
Yeah. Well, and what, if the goal is to wake up, like why from your perspective, right? Big question, I know.
Yeah. Well, okay. So it is a big question because I come at it from a very wide perspective. In the universe, in the galaxy, we happen to live on a planet that is almost the densest planet in that galaxy. Where it's not quite, there's one more dense than us. And what our job as humans, I believe, is to keep the universe running. This sounds pretty grandiose, I know. To keep the universe running by falling asleep and waking up. It's an energy. It's an energy. It's like an octave that keeps going. It keeps moving in a kind of a spiral way to keep things moving. And so I think that's the big why we need to wake up. I think the other reason is I just have to go look at the politics right now. God, really? I think we need to wake up and notice that duality, separation, division is not our friend.
Right.
And we need to recognize, from my perspective, we need to recognize that, you know what? We're all one, which is the first symbol of the Enneagram. All and everything, the circle. We're all one. We look different. We've got different colors, different shapes, different sizes, different ages. But you know what? We're all humans, and we need to be with that. From my
Absolutely.
perspective.
Well, and that brings in the spiral, because one of the things about spiral dynamics that I have found really supportive is to help give me compassion for why people are seeing things the way that they are. It's like super easy for me to look at somebody who's a big Trump fan right now and go, "You fucking idiot. Like, why the fuck would you think that guy's a good guy?" Right? Especially evangelical Christians. Makes me want to choke people. And yet, if we look at blue from spiral dynamics, it makes sense that they need an us and them. They need that hierarchy in order to feel safe. So I'm curious how you and your work are really combining those two systems, what that looks like.
So one of the things that I noticed along my journey was that, especially my kids are, in their 40s, and they would come and say to me, like when they were in their 20s, 30s, our friends can't find themselves in the Enneagram books. And I'm like, well, yeah, because most of the Enneagram books were written at blue.
Yes.
Blue, orange at best.
Yes.
And most of the kids, from Gen X, Z and so forth, they're showing up in the universe with more of an expanded consciousness.
Yeah.
So they see themselves. I mean, it's because we've all done the work prior to help to expand it, but they see themselves from a different lens. And so, an Enneagram 4, my daughter is an Enneagram 4, and she says, I hate being called a drama queen. Well, she's not. She's not. She's not. And so it's like, but that's the way it was described. And so kids had a hard time finding it. That's why I combined it, really, to give multidimensionality to the system so that you could see. I liked what you said a minute ago, how you think about what it is that you're thinking about.
Yeah.
So when you know your Enneagram type, you know your fixation, that gives you the habits of mind and the habits of the heart and the habits of behavior. So the Enneagram teaches us that. The spiral teaches us, how we're thinking about what we're thinking about. When we could put power, sex, money, God at every different level of the spiral, and we're all going to have a different conceptualization of it.
Yeah. Would you break one of those down for listeners? Because that's a great example. Like, let's just talk about sex, for instance, because that's a pretty easy one. So from the different levels, like, how do we look at sex?
Well, okay, that's a whole nother area. So, okay, but how we look at sex, I'll try to do that. Okay, but there's so many things
I know.
that fall into this. But let's try to just break that down. Sex in red is hedonistic. And I don't even talk about purple because we don't have anybody really in the United States and many of the European countries living in purple.
Right.
In red, sex in red is, you're mine, do me or die. Basically, it's like, it's power and control. I say there are two types, perpetrator and victim. That's it. And actually the type 2s in red called themselves the profane prostitutes. I'll do whatever it takes to stay alive, basically. Sex in blue is a little bit more contained. It's the we. It's like, oh, maybe we shouldn't give in to the sins of the flesh. Maybe we should try to keep this stuff under control. After all, blue came on board to get rid of red or to help solve the problems that red created, which was hedonism and impulsiveness. And so blue comes in and says, we need to tamp this down, and it should be between, a husband and a wife. You should be married. I mean, it depends on which religion you're relating to with respect to it. And all of the different religions have different ways of saying how you need to do it, In orange, it's like all roads lead to whatever, it's multiplistic thinking. And so sex could be a little bit more dynamic. It could be, I tease people and say, I can be a trisexual. I can try anything. It's like you can do whatever, because what it's about is about pleasing and gaining what you really want from a position of not like alienating people like we do in red, for instance. So it's a little bit more, nuanced, if you will. The, sex in green is more like a kumbaya, kind of like, let's explore each other. Let's love. Let's be okay and accepting of all of the different types of sex that's out there, bisexual, trisexual, homosexual,
pansexual, right?
Yeah, pansexual. And when I was in Egypt, somebody told me another one, which was sex with aliens, and I forgot the name of that. But
okay.
Yeah, so let's be okay with it.
Yeah.
As long as in green, it's as long as you're not doing harm.
Right.
So
everyone is consent.
Yeah, it's consensual.
Yeah.
That's right. It's consensual. Exactly.
Well, and then how about, you don't have to stick on sex here, but let's talk about the leap that goes from green to tier 2, which starts with yellow.
Yeah. So Claire Graves called it a momentous leap for mankind. Should have said humankind, but okay. It was in the 50s. Right. Yes, of the times. It was in the 50s. And so what happens there is you go into what I call in second tier consciousness, duality kind of starts to fade away a bit. And you see all things, all possibilities, all of the different ways of being, basically. And you're okay with them. and you allow for them. And so it's about, I say that yellow is an I/we meme, meaning that it's about when we move into second tier consciousness, about the good of all, for the love of all children of all species of all times. And when we're looking at yellow, it's about I first, and the we is still a part of it because it's for all of us. Okay. And then when you move into turquoise, it's we/I is the way I like to think about it.
I really like that because Wilbur definitely says that yellow is more of an I stage, and that doesn't feel right to me. What you just said about we makes a lot more sense because I mean, I took Dr. Khaled El-Sherbini's course, The Stages of the Mind. Are you familiar with him?
Yeah, he was my student.
There you go.
I taught him this.
There you go. Perfect.
Yeah.
Great. So then I do know what you know because I learned it from him. Great. Awesome. Second hand.
Well, yeah, maybe,
Sure, yeah. So, well, one of the things that came up when we did our presentations, we had a bunch of people from Sweden, and their project was on how the stages were represented in the pandemic with the way that different leaders were responding to it. And what they had said was that the yellow representation of the leadership had made the decision to not close down the country and to allow people to continue to move about, recognizing that, yes, that would put some people at risk, but those people that were at risk were going to be at risk whether there was openings or not. And it feels like there's such an, like, so many people thought that that was absolutely disastrous and horrifying. And it, from what I've read, the research said that at the end of the day, less people died in Sweden, but more people died more quickly. And like that feels like a yellow sort of, I think, reaction to me because it's recognizing that we can't make everybody happy. We can't keep everybody safe. And it's really unfortunate that people had to die. And we are thinking about the greater good. I don't know. Your thoughts? Your assessment?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, oh gosh, I would like to think about that for a long time, and I see the beauty, the wisdom in it. I think it is true, and I think yellow does allow people to be who they are, where they are, without causing harm to others, and that's the
Right.
key. It's about for the good of all, and at the same time, we could look at, like a blue country, a regime that like we could look at China, shut everything down, caused a lot of difficulties for
For a
people.
long
And so
time.
for a long
Yeah.
time, United States, I mean, I don't think I left my house for 3 years,
Yeah.
really,
Same.
except to take the dog out, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I got really intimately acquainted with Clorox wipes.
Yeah.
Anyway, I do think that yellow did allow for that. Here is somebody, I predominantly live in yellow, and I can say I don't know if it was good or bad.
Right.
I
Exactly.
don't know. It's like, here are the problems. Do we need to have solutions for the problems? I don't know. Are they really problems? I don't know.
Right.
That's the way I think about things in yellow.
Yeah, I love that because it's sort of, well, I guess first thing I just want to pause and let listeners know because a lot of disability justice folks will think what I said was horrible and the fact that we're talking about people dying is inhumane. And I think what we're saying here is that we don't know the right answers, and each country made our choices with the information that they had at the time. And if we would go back, would we do it differently? I hope so, when the next pandemic happens, because it will, like, chances are more likely than not.
Mhm.
Hopefully, we will use the information, not just that we learned as this country, but that globally we learned in order to cause the least harm possible. So I'm not saying don't go mask right now. I'm not saying like let's just let everybody die. It's not what I'm saying. But I'm wondering if we can, there's assuredness that I think people want in like that I will be protected at all cost. And that's the green part, right? That's the like we want everybody to be happy, we want everybody to be safe, and everyone should have their dignity, but it's also not guaranteed, unfortunately.
Yeah, I vacillate between, I do have a 7 wing, so I vacillate between being positive and optimistic and being fatalistic in that, humans are really slow to change.
Mhm.
And so I don't know if we will have gained the knowledge. I would hope that we've gained the knowledge, but
Mhm.
certainly it's out there. And when you're in blue or when you're in orange, you can't see green and yellow.
Right.
I like to tell my students it's like the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. The indigenous people of the United States did not see those large ships.
Mhm.
They saw canoes rowing ashore because they had no reference point for it.
Mm.
And I can imagine that the United States would do a very similar kind of thing again because we are fairly blue orange.
Yeah.
We do have people who have risen to green yellow in their cognitive capacity. And at the same time, our leadership is not that. Although who knows with Kamala?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this would be an interesting time to, I think, talk about what the potentials for the future could be. And, we're not we're not trying to predict the future, but just sort of using the spiral lens to think about where we are right now. I mean, something that would come up really often when I was taking Khalid's course, because I was the only American, they would talk about Trump like it's just some fun game. And I'm like, yo, this is my life. And then Khalid said, it is our lives too, because what happens in America does impact the rest of the world. And what we talked about was, do we have the right conditions in order to move forward, or will we be pulled back because the conditions are just not right yet, and we have more struggle that we have to endure because we are solving for the previous stage, right?
So I love Almas's teaching. Are you familiar with Hamid?
No.
A.H. Almas. So
Oh,
Hamid,
okay, got it. Yes.
Diamond Heart.
Yes.
I took a course from him on the instincts, and I believe, and his teaching is that we are de-evolving right now. And so what I've taught my students is in order to move forward, sometimes we go backwards. And I believe we're going backwards now. I believe that we're in a de-evolutionary period. We're not as awake, we're polarized.
Mhm.
Everything is dualistic in nature. I mean, I can certainly see the whole. I'm sure you can see the whole. And, you know, who wants to hear that? People want to hear their side.
Right.
And so we are de-evolving. And like I said, so let's say we're in orange. In order to catapult into green, we're probably going to need to take a step back into red blue, unfortunately. And that's what we see now, trying to kill the ex-president, trying to kill people who you have a different opinion with. So it's like, no, we're not in a good space in the United States. The good news is everybody else is in a bad place too. So with maybe the exception of Finland and Sweden,
Right,
I mean,
right.
yeah, you know,
Yeah.
I love Helsinki. So, I had a school in Egypt, in Cairo, and I still have lots of students there, and I talk with them all the time, and it's really horrible there for them right now.
Yeah.
And it's really bad for us. Even though our economy is the best in the world, we're not realizing it on a personal level. At
Right.
least some people are not realizing it on a personal level. So
Right.
I do have hope that the future will be brighter, and we've also done ourselves in several times. Now, I'll add another one of my favorite systems, which probably is not a good thing to do right at this moment, but astrology tells us
Yes!
we're in the ninth manifestation. I love Patricia Norelli Bachelet's work on the Gnostic Circle.
I don't know any of
And
this. Yum, 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 yum.
yeah, go get it. You'll enjoy it. Anyway, we've just left the eighth manifestation. A manifestation takes 2,066 years to get through. And there are, of course, 12 manifestations. And we just have left the eighth manifestation. And that was the manifestation of suffering. And we've entered the
Mm.
manifestation of unity consciousness, which we've also known as the Aquarian Age. It's the 9th manifestation. So over the next 2066 years, we're going to achieve unity consciousness or not. And so, I'm hopeful. I loved what I saw. I cried. I loved what I saw between Biden and Kamala and the Democratic Party. I loved what I saw. I loved how supportive all sides were regarding Trump being almost murdered. I mean, that's crazy, crazy land. It's like, yeah, okay. So
Yeah.
these are my rants.
No, well, I appreciate it. And I want to position this for listeners who are like, wait, I have to wait 2,000 years for things to get better. That's not what you're saying. I want to say that the idea of devolution gives me hope because you said right at the beginning, if we're holding the whole, if we look at all of the systems, and let's just put the US as the big system, right? If we look at that and know that like just if Trump gets elected, which hope to God not, but if he does, that's not the end of the US story. It might be the end of democracy as we have known it for the past however many hundreds of years. Then something new can come forward. And so the devolution is like we're being told right now by very, I guess, well meaning people that like you have to vote like your life depends on it. And we've like that's always been the truth. And we're only paying attention now because things have gotten so much worse. And
Yeah, I think that's true.
they won't get better unless we pay attention to them and we do something different, right?
Correct. And what I'm saying, and you're right, I'm not saying it's going to take 2,000 years to,
Right.
to get better. I'm seeing it getting better already. Somebody sent me a meme of, I think it was Obama, hope, Trump, hate, somebody else, and then Kamala, grow. And I love that. And it's like I think we are in a space where we're gonna grow one way or another. What I know about humanity and about life is that we're not in charge. There's something much bigger than us
Yeah.
that's directing this journey. And as somebody who fixates at 8, it took me a long time to learn I'm not in control. And so sometimes I
Mhm.
still rail against the fact that I'm not. But
Yes.
I we're gonna we're, here it is again. We're either gonna be okay or we're not. We sometimes have to go backwards to go forward. And I think that's where we are right now. And I have hope. So
Yeah, and I want to put another note for listeners because so just to give you some frame, my therapist community, we are experiencing right now what Ken Wilber would call the mean green meme. Are you familiar with his thoughts about that? So, for listeners, we've talked for a while about the hypocrisy of this green space that we occupy where everyone should be equal. We love everyone and everyone is amazing unless you disagree with us. And then we're going to chop your head off. And so that's what I'm seeing on my feed right now about Kamala is people going back to, well, she's been complicit in genocide with Joe Biden and all sorts of these things. And my hope is that we can hold people accountable and they've got so much great stuff. Like there is really great stuff that Kamala has to offer and probably anybody else who comes after that. A politician is not just an abuser or an oppressor. They are like Joe Biden for all his faults. I think is probably a pretty good guy, you know? And I'm guessing that for Kamala as well. And my hope is that they're waking up too, that our leaders are waking up, right? Because if our leaders are situated so strongly in orange, then they're not going to be able to see the green possibilities. And so instead of, beating all the leaders down for what they're not doing right, let's pray that they wake up and or let's you wake up and you go run for something because we need people who are awakening to help lead us into something new that we haven't even imagined yet.
just the fact that your community is doing this or that, or she did this or she did that, shows that they're not in green, by the way.
It's
I'm
true.
sorry.
No, it's
I'm
true.
sorry.
It's
It's
true.
just it's dualistic in nature, and
Yeah.
the green meme is it's hard. I call it, P and Jesus. All are welcome here unless you're gay or you don't have money or you don't whatever.
Me and
So
Jesus. Yes, 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 yes.
it's crossroads here in
Oh, yeah.
Cincinnati. Anyway,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So
Touchdown Jesus, I remember so well.
it's like, no, the truth of the matter is we really need to see that this is where we are.
Right,
You know, the Israeli Palestinian issue is almost 100 years, 78 years in the making.
right,
This is not new. And yes, it does look like a genocide. It almost looks like a repeat of what happened many years ago.
right.
And so and that's how we evolve.
Mhm.
It's hard. And I don't think we humans, nobody I know, and I'm pretty brilliant, nobody I know has the capacity to hold all and everything.
Right,
It's like we don't know what we don't know. We just don't. And so can we be in the evolution of it? Can we be in the experience of it? Can we notice our feelings, our thoughts, and our behaviors
yes,
and breathe before we take an action?
yes,
Like, calling somebody out for something that who knows if that's the way they think or not.
right.
My whole thing is about conscious inquiry.
Yes,
So you really don't know unless you've had a sit down and talked with people about things. You just
right.
don't know. And you know that as therapists, as coaches, we humans have all kinds of preconceived notions and biases.
Mhm.
And unless we sit down with somebody and engage in, NVC, nonviolent communication, we're just not going to know. We're just not going to know. And once we do sit down, I mean, Trump is not my favorite human on earth. And yet, as somebody who, has studied psychology all of her life, I look and think, wow, what must have happened for him to become who he is?
Did you read his niece's book?
No, I haven't read it. I do have it, but
It makes complete sense.
sure. But
Yeah,
when I think about that, then I start crying
right,
because I see the humanity.
right,
And I think that's what we as therapists, coaches, whatever we want to call ourselves, need to engage in is our collective humanity.
and I'll just say too, because somebody's gonna be like, "But Trump is like an abuser, and that's like saying stay with your abuser." We're not saying that. You need to have safety, right? Before most likely you can have compassion. And so what I know has happened for me, and I wonder if it's happened for you, is building safety within so that I can tolerate the compassion for somebody who's so awful. And
Yeah.
that's not an admonishment. Like if you're listening to this and you're not there, that doesn't mean there's something wrong with you, but that means that there's capacity building that needs to be done. And that's exactly what you're talking about working with the Enneagram and the spiral, right?
Right, exactly. It's building your own container, being your own inner authority. It's like, holding yourself accountable. You know, for me, compassion, loving, kindness, that's what's required for everything we're looking at. And if we can do that, I think it might make the world a little bit of a better place.
Right.
It seems so hard for people to do.
I know. And I've been thinking a lot about the function of denial lately, especially as it applies to our political systems, right? And so this will probably not come out until the fall, but we're talking about this right as Biden has stepped down and has allowed Kamala to step forward to be the presidential nominee. And I think about we continue to do the same thing politically over and over, expecting different results. And it's worked before for politicians to put on a good face and say that everything's fine and I'm going to beat this candidate. We're in a new era where the demand for authenticity is very strong. And so we cannot do the same things that we've been doing. And again, that sort of goes back to the necessity of leaders to wake up so that they can tolerate the shadow within themselves, so that when it's presented like by the other party, they don't have to fight it. They can be like, yeah, I know I did those awful things, and here's what I've actually done to try to repair.
I think Biden just gave us an excellent example of somebody who looked at his shadow.
Yes.
I'm impressed. I'm not surprised, but I'm impressed. I mean, yes, he could have hung on to his ego. Somebody said, what stops a politician's drive for success? And the answer was embalming fluid. I think that's hysterical.
That's amazing.
So, but you know what? But I think he was brilliant. I think he did a hard look. I loved the interaction between him and Kamala the other day at the headquarters. It was loving. It was authentic. It was genuine. So, yeah, we do need to just keep looking at the shadow. That's what we need to keep looking at. And not just looking at it to slice and dice it, but looking at it to accept it.
Yes.
Because you wouldn't know light without darkness.
Right.
And so it's like really, really important.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Well, I want to respect your time, and we're coming close to the end of the hour. But I mean, I know I would love to take a course from you now, and I'm sure listeners might as well. What are you teaching? What's upcoming for you?
Well, same. You can go to goconscious.com where all of the classes are going. I am teaching an ongoing Enneagram Spiral Dynamics class. It's a certification class. It's the one Khalid took and the one many of his students in Egypt did. So that's going on. I am teaching a coaching class using the Spiral Dynamics and the Enneagram. I taught a great class, The Wisdom of the Barbie movie.
Oh,
it was a fourth way teaching. I mean, it was amazing. I just really got into it. It was a real big fourth way teaching. So anyway, there is a lot that's on the website, goconscious.com. Just send me a message. We'll get you involved.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I realize I completely bombed asking you the questions about being a healer and a wounded healer. So just briefly, how do you relate to the term wounded healer, or do you?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, I think and we did talk about it at the very beginning. It's like, how did I get into this? My family was very loving and very Appalachian and very, very harmful.
Yeah.
So that's why I got into this, was to heal myself and heal the relationships. I wanted to be able to love my mother and father before they died, and was able to do that. So I think I actually think anybody who's doing this work, I actually think we all have a wound. I think all Enneagram types have a core wounding. And so that's the work. Get into it and deal with it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here today. This was just an absolute pleasure. And I look forward to hoping to learn from you in the future.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm really happy to have, been invited. It was fun. Nice, lively conversation. I like it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to our guest for an amazing conversation today. To find out more about today's guest, you can visit www.headheartbiztherapy.com/podcast.
You can find Sarah at Head Heart Biz Therapy on Facebook and Instagram.
And you can find Anne at Spare Room Wellness or spareroomwellness.com.
Thanks as always to Andrea Klunder and the Creative Imposter Studios for editing, to Liam O'Donnell for the album art, and to Ben Mueller for our theme music. Until next time, bye-bye.